In studio, Raul Labrador, Attorney General, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for bringing this weather to welcome me to Idaho Falls.
Well, you're welcome. That's Mother Nature's our welcoming committee sometimes. So we were just talking about that. How are things with you?
They're going really well. You know, life is good. We just had a great Thanksgiving, had all the kids at home. We have 5 kids and 6 grandkids, and it was a full house. And as every family knows, it's always good to also not have a full house after the full house.
Yes, right.
Cleanup is desired.
Cleanup is always good.
You're like, we want an empty house now for a while. So.
Empty nesting is not that bad.
That's true. Well, we're glad you're here. We see what's going on here. Tell us the purpose of your visit and why you're on this side of the state.
Absolutely. We're visiting a couple of businesses, but the most important thing that we're doing this morning, we're giving an award to 2 law enforcement officers, one from the Idaho Falls Police Department and the other one from the Sheriff's Department. And they have both, between them, have arrested 100 people who commit internet crimes against children. I don't know if people understand this, but the Office of Attorney General leads the task force. So the Attorney General is the lead of the task force on the internet crimes against children. And these are the really ugly, evil people that are out there creating or disseminating videos about children. They're just the worst of the worst. And we have made a tremendous effort in our office over the last 3 years to change the way that these cases are prosecuted, the way that they're investigated. And last year, we arrested 3 times as many people as the previous 3 years combined.
Wow.
So we have made just a huge difference in the way we're doing. But the way we do this is by working with our own officers, that work for the Attorney General's office, but we have these great partnerships with law enforcement offices throughout the state of Idaho. And these 2 officers, Detective Jared Mendenhall of the Idaho Falls Police Department and Detective Corey Payne of the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, between them, they have arrested 100 perpetrators who have been committing these horrible crimes. I mean, these are people who are doing God's work. They're really working hard to protect our families and to protect Idaho, and I'm proud of the work we're doing. So we're giving them an award for the work that they've been doing.
Attorney General, I remember you talking about this early on in your administration, that was going to be a point of emphasis. And since then, it almost seems like every week, every few days, here's another person getting charged, child pornography or chatting online with a kid or whatever. And I think it's easy for people to get the impression that there's a spike in these crimes, when in reality, there's just a renewed emphasis on going after these crimes.
So there's both. Unfortunately, there's both. People, the internet just gives you easy access to good things and to really, really bad things. So so I'm here to tell every parent out there that you need to know what your kids are looking at online. You need to know who they're talking to. You need to know what apps they're using, because they're using these apps. These bad actors are using these apps to get access to your children. And you really need to know, the biggest regret, and I say this again and again and again, the biggest regret I have as a father is that I actually gave my kids a phone when they were teenagers. Yeah. You need to wait till they're older. You need to, in fact, if I had to do it all over again, I would wait till they're 27.
Yeah.
It's just a horrible, horrible device that gives them access to a lot of really bad things out there. But the reality is that we don't live in that world, and most kids have a phone. You need to know who they're talking to, because there's predators out there. So the number of activity is going up. The number of crimes are going up. But we do have a renewed emphasis. I actually hired a new ICAC commander 3 years ago. I hired a new chief of my criminal division. And I told him that we needed to make sure that we were using the resources that the people of Idaho are giving us through the legislature, and we need to use them effectively and efficiently. And, when I became the Attorney General, we had a huge number of cases that were being submitted to the Office of Attorney General. So we get these cases come into the office through actually the internet providers. Is somebody in the internet company, they say, we think this might be a crime. You need to be looking at this. They send us these these messages telling us that you should look at this, and we had a huge backlog in the state of Idaho. We had about 2,400 cases that were not being investigated, were not being looked at, or there were more tips. They're not really all cases. Not every tip is a crime, right?
Yeah.
Those tips were growing exponentially. And I told my team, we need to get rid of the backlog, and we need to make sure that we start investigating all these cases. And within 6 months, we got rid of the backlog. Now we look at every tip that comes to the Office of Attorney General. We look at them within 24 hours. And we make sure that they're investigated. If it's a crime, it's referred to one of our investigators, and it's assigned to one of the prosecutors so we can start doing this. And then the other change that we made is we start prosecuting the cases internally. Instead of sending them to the local prosecutors, we start prosecuting them internally. And that's why you're seeing this huge increase, because we're just doing a much better job than we were doing before.
Okay, so it doesn't create this added burden on the local county prosecutors.
Correct. We're doing it ourselves. Plus, we have engaged and we have improved the relationships that we have with the local communities. Some of the local law enforcement offices did not like working with the Office of Attorney General because they thought they were wasting their time because they were just kind of running around in circles.
Yep.
Now we're training them, we're working with them, and we have these renewed partnerships that are, that's why we're doing what we're doing today. We're actually coming to give an award to 2 local law enforcement people that have done great service for the community.
That's great.
So, Attorney General, obviously we applaud this. We've talked a lot about this. I have a question of doing this part is fantastic and needed. What about the sentencing structures for these crimes? Would you like to see a change in some of those? Because I believe that me and our listeners feel like maybe they're a little light sometimes on the sentencing.
So I try, as you know, I was a legislator, I was a congressman. I try not to comment on policy. That's up to the legislature to do. But what we do is we have emphasized every time our prosecutors prosecute these cases, we explain to the judges how important it is to give them a tough sentence, because these are images that are harming kids. And what these kids are going through is just horrendous. The acts, in fact, they're so bad that I tell my investigators, I don't want to know all the details of the things that you're seeing. We have to keep them on mental health appointments. They have to see a mental health person every few months. We make sure, because these things that they're seeing are really, really horrendous things. So I don't even want to know the details. And we try to explain to the judges, and we have seen the sentences increase as we have made an emphasis of explaining better to the judges, more and more what these things are. But yes, if you think that they should have bigger sentences and more appropriate sentences, talk to your legislators and make sure that they do something to increase those sentences.
Is there something underlying this that there's not enough jail space, or are there reasons why this happens internally that maybe the average person doesn't understand? They just see what they think is a light sentence, and then they have understandable anger after that.
Well, I think there's so many crimes that are happening, and the jail space maybe is part of it. I think maybe a little bit of the education. I think that's why you have seen the sentences increase from the work that we have been doing. Yep. Because I think sometimes the judges think, oh, it's just a video, or it's just a picture, or it's just this. But there's really so much more to the harm that's being done to these children, so much more to the harm that it's really doing to our society, to our state, to our cities, to our counties. And we are trying to educate the judges on the fact that these people, especially the ones who have a lot of porn on their phones and are distributing the porn, we do a pretty good job with the ones that are making these videos. I think those people get slapped pretty good. Yeah. But it's when you just see a video that's being shared, you're not really thinking about all the harm. I think sometimes the judges don't think about all the harm that went, that these kids went through. It might just be a video, but it's a video that was made and where that child was harmed, when that child was put into danger, and their lives have been affected. And we are training not just our prosecutors, but we're trying to train the local prosecutors on explaining that to the judges.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's shift and talk about something else. We know that next month is the Supreme Court hearing for Idaho's Fairness in Sports law that Barb Ehart got passed a few years ago. You're probably limited in what you can talk about here because it is a pending case before the Supreme Court. But if there are things that you can share about that case, I know there's a lot of people that are interested and they're excited to have this case go before the High Court.
Well, as you know, Idaho is the first state in the nation to pass a law to prevent boys from participating in women's sports. In fact, I was watching this morning a video, which is, doesn't say much about me, but it was Ricky Gervais talking at one of his stand-up gigs, and he said, and I'm not going to be as crude as he was, but he said, I cannot believe that we're talking about the fact that women do not have male parts. He did not say male parts. Okay?
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And he said 10 years ago, who would have thought? He said, no, you wouldn't find anybody's tweet. You wouldn't find anybody's Facebook post talking about that because 10 years ago, no one would have thought that that was something we were going to be talking about. And he did it in his own funny way, but it's exactly right. It's just, I cannot believe that we're going to the U.S. Supreme Court to talk about whether boys should be participating in girls' sports, whether there should be any question about that. But for 5 years, America kind of went crazy. And America started thinking that that was okay. So Idaho was the first state in the union to pass this law. We had the ACLU sue the state of Idaho. A federal district judge in Boise said that that law was unconstitutional, and the Ninth Circuit agreed with that federal district court saying that that law was unconstitutional, which to me was preposterous. But the worst part was that the attorney general at the time of the state of Idaho, a Republican attorney general, the one I defeated in a Republican primary, said that that law was unconstitutional. So the ACLU, as their Exhibit A in their filing against the state of Idaho, which that attorney general was defending, was the opinion of the attorney general saying that it was unconstitutional. So one of the main reasons I ran for this office is because I thought Idaho was not being well represented in the courts, was not being well represented by the Office of Attorney General. So I changed all that, and I decided not only that I didn't think that law was constitutional, I thought that law was constitutional, but I would challenge it and go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So we have asked the U.S. Supreme Court to hear this, and we feel pretty good about it. You can't ever bet on what the Supreme Court's going to do. We do have one wrinkle in this law. After 5 years of, in this case, after 5 years of fighting the ACLU on this issue, and 5 years of the state of Idaho not being able to actually enforce this law, the ACLU now, when they see that they're probably going to lose in the U.S. Supreme Court, has decided that they want to dismiss the case. That the boy who was trying to play at BSU no longer wants to participate in girls' sports, and that makes the case moot, according to them. And we're saying, wait a second, this is too late. You have been preventing the state of Idaho from enforcing this law for 5 years. You can't just dismiss the case. But the problem is that the Supreme Court may decide that it is moot. Now, the good news is that there's another case from West Virginia, and which has the same issues, and both cases are going to be heard on the same day. So a decision will be made. I hope the decision is made on the Idaho case and not on the West Virginia case. But either way, the issue will be decided.
And when will that be decided?
It's going to be the second week of, the hearing will be the second week of January. So we're going to Washington, D.C. to go before the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. And obviously, it will take them a couple of months to write an opinion.
To figure all of that out.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess in a situation like that, where they said, no, you can't dismiss the case, what attorneys then carry the case? If they're like, we want it dismissed, can you force attorneys to defend a case?
So what we did is that at the federal district court, they came back and they tried to dismiss the case, and we told the federal judge, I'm sorry, this is unfair for the state of Idaho. We have not been able to actually enforce the law for 5 years, and now they just want to dismiss it last minute, and the federal district court agreed with us, to their credit. Yeah. They said, you're right, we're not going to dismiss this. That would be unfair to the state of Idaho. We also filed a motion. They filed a motion with the U.S. Supreme Court trying to get it dismissed, and we told the U.S. Supreme Court that would be unfair. The Supreme Court did not make a decision They didn't say that it was fair or unfair, or they were on our side or their side. They just say, let's just have the hearing and we'll talk about it then. So that's going to be, it's one of those legal issues that is going to be decided, that it doesn't really have anything to do with the law itself. It's just whether the case is a case in controversy, whether it's something that is still alive, or is it a case that is no longer alive. And our argument is that it is still alive, because even if this particular person does not want to participate in girls' sports, the ACLU already said that they're going to sue again. Yeah. So they're going to find another plaintiff. So we've already gone through this whole process. So let's just get it over with.
Was there a sense here, and you can find a conspiracy theory about anything, that maybe the plaintiffs in this case felt like they couldn't win in the current constitution of the Supreme Court? Their chances weren't good, so they didn't want to bring it now. They wanted to wait for a different time? Or do you think it was just a genuine, I'm done playing college sports, I just want to close this chapter in my life?
I don't want to comment on that individual's motives, because I really don't know them, and I can't comment on their motives. But there's no question that the ACLU does not like the current makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court.
There was one viral moment in Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination hearing. And
just one?
Well, the one I'm thinking of, when she was asked, what is a woman? And she said, I can't answer that because I'm not a biologist.
Yes.
And I thought, is that going to get revisited here when she's hearing this case? Because what is a woman is the core issue of this case before the Supreme Court.
Absolutely, and I don't know if that's going to be revisited, and I would rather not comment on the individual justices. But what I can tell you, that even that viral moment, what is a woman? You don't even have to go there. The question is whether males have an advantage over females in sports. Yep. And that's why Title IX was enacted. So there's two issues that are being heard by the court. One is whether this is prevented by Title IX, and I think it clearly is, because Title IX was instituted to ensure, and this is why Barb has, why this was such a huge issue for her. She was a women's college coach, and she had benefited and participated with Title IX all of her adult life, and all of a sudden you were saying that no, we're going to allow boys to participate in basketball, in swimming, in volleyball. I have a daughter who played volleyball in high school, and when I saw that video of the male hitting the volleyball and breaking the face of a woman. I've been hit in the face by a volleyball, playing volleyball, because I used to play. I wasn't an athlete. I just played a lot of pickup ball. And it hurts like crazy. And when you get hit by somebody who's really, really good, it can break your nose. It can break your face. And all I could think about was my daughter being hit by a male in a competitive sport in the college level, where those athletes, are incredible. And it's fundamentally unfair. That's why you have Title IX. So there's first the Title IX issue, and then there's the argument of whether the equal protection, whether the Constitution protects a male who wants to participate in women's sports. And like I said, going back to the Ricky Gervais case, story, there's just no way 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that any of us would have thought, oh, yeah, the Constitution of the United States will protect a boy and allow him to participate in a women's volleyball league or in a women's basketball league.
Real quick, you mentioned Barbie Hart. We're so grateful for her. I've interviewed her on this subject multiple times. Our listeners need to remember that when she played college ball, the female athletes would get the male athletes' hand-me-down uniforms. And that's what they used to have to wear. Yeah. So that's how far we've come. And all of a sudden we want to roll it back and bring the boys into the sports. That makes no sense. Okay, in a nugget size, break it down. What isn't constitutional? Is it really that they believe a man has the constitutional right to play?
Yeah, so they believe that a man, that preventing a man from participating in women's sports is violating the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution.
Okay. It's 8:26 now on News Talk 107.9. We're going to take a quick... How long do we have you for today? However?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll have you done by 2 or 3 p.m. So.
Oh, no problem.
All right.
No problem.
We'll be back. Another segment with Attorney General Raul Labrador coming up on News Talk 107.9. 8:31 now. News Talk 107.9. Neal Larson along with Julie Mason and Idaho's Attorney General Raul Labrador joining us in studio this morning. And want to shift to another case now, Attorney General. That is the lawsuit that was brought by Representative Stephanie Mickelson, Moscow School District. There were a whole bunch of plaintiffs on this particular one, challenging House Bill 93. That's the Parental Choice in Education law. I know it's a pending case, so you're going to step lightly here in how you answer our questions. But what would you say about that particular case right now?
So we just submitted our briefs, and we feel the case, the state has a really strong case to win this case. But again, just like the U.S. Supreme Court, you don't know what the state Supreme Court's going to do. I think we have a great state Supreme Court, and I think they will make the right decision. But hopefully, they will rule in our favor. I have been a little bit surprised by the arguments that were made by the other side. And it's interesting to see, you mentioned a representative who sued the state of Idaho. So apparently I wasn't doing my job really well when I was a state representative. If my side didn't win, I just needed to sue, right? Instead of just accept that.
I didn't get what I wanted.
I didn't get what I wanted, so I think I'm going to go take my lunchbox and sue somebody.
This branch of the government didn't work out, so I'll go to this branch of the government.
So that's really interesting to me that is happening right now. But what's really most interesting is that this particular representative loves launch, the launch program. You're familiar with that.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if you know, but the state of Idaho is giving money to BYU Idaho, which is a religious institution.
Oh, the horror.
And apparently that's okay when it's a program she likes.
Yeah.
But it's not okay when it's a program she doesn't like.
Yeah. And we have tried to make... In fact, that's our gotcha question. Whenever we interview somebody who hates House Bill 93.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this particular case, though, is maybe you don't want to comment on what's in it, but it's notable what's not in it. And that's a Blaine Amendment unconstitutionality argument. It's fascinating that has been Jim Jones' main talking point for months and months, maybe even years now.
For years.
And there's not a mention of it in this lawsuit.
Well, I think the U.S. Supreme Court has been hinting for years that the Blaine Amendment is actually unconstitutional. And if you know anything about the Blaine Amendment, it was actually a very anti-religious amendment that was put in a lot of state constitutions, because it initially started where people did not want Catholics to have private education, so they prevented Catholics in some more Protestant states from allowing them to have state money going to their religious institutions. In Idaho, particularly, it was anti-LDS. The Blaine Amendment in Idaho was to prevent the LDS church from actually instituting private education and private organizations that would be funded by the state. So it has a very anti-religious tinge to it, and it's just interesting that now LDS people are using it against House Bill 93, which it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But I think people should understand a little bit of the history, and I think that's one of the main reasons they didn't use the Blaine Amendment, because the U.S. Supreme Court has not, in fact, ruled that the Blaine Amendment is unconstitutional, but every time there has been a U.S. Supreme Court case that involves issues tied to the Blaine Amendment, the U.S. Supreme Court has said no. You cannot discriminate. If the state's giving funding to private institutions that are non-religious, they need to give funding to the religious institutions. Now, it doesn't say that you have to give money to religious institutions. It just says that if you are going to give it to a private institution, you cannot discriminate against religious institutions.
Well, and in this particular case, where they've structured it as a tax credit.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
If I get the grocery tax credit, $155 or something per person, if I go out and buy a stack of Bibles with that grocery tax credit, that could be a violation for people using an education tax credit to use.
So I'm going to correct you. You couldn't use that because that's a stack of Bibles. That's not groceries.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, I guess you could use it for whatever you want.
Yeah, because the grocery tax credit.
But if they give you a food, let's go. If they give you a food tax,
yes,
right? Decrease.
Yeah.
If they waive the food tax, you could use it at BYU Creamery.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
Right. And you
Correct,
could,
yeah.
the state could say, no, you can buy ice cream everywhere. And I don't know if BYU Idaho has a BYU.
Yeah.
Where I went to, BYU, we had BYU Creamery. I don't know what BYU
Yeah.
Idaho has here. You could use it at whatever institution you could use it at that is private.
Right. But
Yeah.
I guess the point here is
But your point
you-
is well taken.
you
yes.
have a buffer, and it's the parents making the choice
Yeah.
for the public education. It's not the state making that choice.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, just like the parents can buy any book, for their kids' education, they could buy a Bible, like you said.
yeah.
Yes.
Just because you're familiar with court cases, do you have a crystal ball? Do you know the timeline of how this is going to work out?
I don't. We're waiting to hear from the court, if we're going to have a hearing, or they could actually just make the decision on the briefs. They could decide not to hold a hearing. So we're waiting from them. We're at their mercy.
So this kicks in January. This
Correct.
law does. So there is kind of a practical deadline for them to issue some kind of a decision, right? Well, I guess if they don't issue a decision, the program moves
The program
forward.
just starts.
Okay,
Correct.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So I guess
so
there's
they
not
don't
really-
have to. They don't have to issue a decision at
Okay.
any time. And what one decision they have made is that they did not enjoin the state from actually
Okay.
implementing the law.
so
so
it can go forward.
it's fully
can't go-
active.
It's fully active until the court says something differently.
Something otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's and again, you can never read into too much, but can you read into that a little bit? That maybe that's their posture towards this thing.
I'm going to keep my comments to myself.
okay, that's probably
because you really,
smart move.
You really can't read. It's true.
Yeah.
When you think you're winning, you sometimes lose. When you think you're going to lose, you sometimes win.
Yeah.
So you really can't read anything into their actions.
Yeah, gotcha.
All right, we'll finish with I saw a tweet of yours or an X post where it said Labrador 3, Satanic Temple 0,
Yes.
meaning you've won in the courts against the Satanic Temple. Would you like to explain to our listeners what those victories are that you have?
So that's been one of the most interesting things that I have done. On my first day in office as Attorney General, the Satanic Temple decided to sue the state of Idaho, and they made it personal. They wanted to sue me because they knew that I was going to be a strong pro-life Attorney General, and they sued the state of Idaho on some pretty gross things. They believe that abortion is their sacrament, so that it violates their religious rights to have anti-abortion laws. And they also believe that forcing a woman to have a baby is akin to slavery. So it violates, according to them, the 13th Amendment. Those are two pretty gross things that you can think about, how evil and sick their mindset is. But the reality that even the federal district court and even the Ninth Circuit has ruled in favor of the state of Idaho and has ruled against the state of Idaho. So it's been kind of fun. When we won the first case, this is the third time that we won. When we won the first case, we sent out a press release with the headline, Labrador defeats Satan. And even the Idaho statement had to run that headline. So it's been, we try to have a little bit of fun. We have a friend who gave us a golden violin, if you know the old song, The Devil Went Down
Yes.
to Georgia. So he gave me a golden violin that we actually have in our office now.
So good. So good. Do you think that they're going to continue forward, or is this an end?
I think they'll continue. They'll
Okay.
keep trying different things, but I think this case is over. I think they're going to try
They'll
to,
just-
people that are trying to force Idaho to have abortions are going to keep fighting the state of Idaho.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave it with that. Attorney General Raul Labrador joining us in studio this morning. It's always great to see you.
Great to see you as well.